everyone, welcome back to my channel, or welcome if you're new. Today I thought it would be fun to switch it up and film outside. It is a lovely day. It's a little bit chilly, but it's still really nice outside. And also my entire family is home for Christmas break, and so the house is not very quiet. So outside it is. Today I thought I would tell you about my favorite books of 2023. I have my bullet journal because I have them written down in here. This is also kind of like a precursor to my next video, which will be a book bracket where all of my favorite books from each month will have to face off until I find my favorite book. And I'm really looking forward to it, and I think it's going to be kind of tricky to choose. So let's just jump into my favorite books of 2023. I'm also going to tell you about my 5 stars, and then if I didn't have any 5 stars for that month, then I'll just tell you what my favorite book of that month was, even if it was like lower ratings, if that makes sense. So in January, the 3 5-star books that I had were Return of the King by J.R.R. Tolkien, Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel, and the first in the Sisters Grimm series. And that is by somebody. I can't remember his name. I'll put it on the screen. So let's first talk about Return of the King. Return of the King is the 3rd book in the Lord of the Rings trilogy. I read it for the first time at the end of last year, beginning of this year, and I absolutely loved it. Return of the King was actually my favorite out of all of them, mostly because I really, really love Aragorn. I love his character development and just who he represents as a person and his personality traits, and I just think that he is very respectable, and I love how much he cares for other people and is still a very strong person. Something that I absolutely love about Lord of the Rings is that it never equates softness or kindness for weakness. In fact, it does the opposite, and that's something that I really, really treasure and value in my personal life. So that is why I love The Return of the King, and I want to reread it. Like, I already want to reread it, and so I might have to do that soon. The next one was Sea of Tranquility by Emily St. John Mandel. This book takes place during a pandemic, and it's kind of a time travel book, so you're kind of traveling between multiple stages of different various pandemics throughout time, and it's something that was really interesting. Obviously, it's interesting to read a book about pandemics after going through a pandemic and seeing people's reactions and the way they respond to various situations. I really fell in love with Emily St. John Mandel's writing, and I actually have another 5-star from her later. And I just love the way that she writes, and I love the characters, and I love the way that this story was woven together, and how all of these different timelines and seemingly unrelated things tied together in the end. I loved the way that it wrapped up, and so that definitely became a new favorite for me. The next one was the first in the Sisters Grimm trilogy, or not trilogy, there's like 6 books. Or 7 or 9. There's 9. I reread this as part of my rereading childhood favorites. This is a middle grade about 2 sisters who find out that they are descendants of the Brothers Grimm and that the people in the Grimm fairy tales are real. And they solve little mysteries and they have little adventures, and it's just a super, super sweet, super fun middle grade. I have a whole reading blog for it that you can check out. I'll put in the cards and the description box. But that's definitely a wonderful middle grade I would recommend checking out. And even if you're an adult, it's never too late to read some good middle grade, because sometimes you just need that simplicity, you know? And they're really well written. They're great books. In February, my 5-star book was Station 11 by Emily St. John Mandel. Again, I fell in love with Emily St. John Mandel's writing, and I would like to read more from her backlog, and I'm excited to see like what she comes out with in the future, because I just think she's an amazing author. I love the way that she writes her narratives and how she ties different narratives together. I just think it's so well done. This is another one that takes place during a pandemic, and you're following various groups of people kind of at the beginning of the pandemic and then a few years into it. I still think about some of the concepts in this book. Like, every time I go to an airport, I think about the way it talks about planes and how you take for granted flying on a plane when it's not available to you anymore. And so many of those concepts in that book, like, I just still think about it, and so I really, really love that about this book. In March, I had 4 5-star reads, which is great. The 5th Sisters Grimm book, again, in that same Sisters Grimm series, so there's not a whole lot to say about it besides just like that it's part of the series, and I really liked that one. The Girl Who Drank the Moon by Kelly Barnhill. This one is about, there's a village who sacrifices a baby to the witch in the woods every year, And then every year the witch is like, oh my gosh, these people are abandoning their babies, like I gotta take care of this baby. And so she feeds them starlight and then makes sure that they are placed in a loving and caring home in a neighboring village. So all of these children are taken care of, and one night she is really tired when she goes to retrieve this baby, and she accidentally feeds her moonlight instead of starlight, which magics her and makes her a witch too. And so then she's raising this girl and trying to teach her life lessons, and we follow some other characters. There's a lovable little dragon who I absolutely adore, and like a swamp monster who has some really wonderful words of wisdom. This one just has a lovely vibe to it. It's very cozy, and I really loved all of the morals of the story, and it was just really interesting to me. The next one was A Wizard's Guide to Defensive Baking by T. Kingfisher. I also really fell in love with T. Kingfisher's writing this year. I never read any of her books before either, and it's so fun. It is just so fun. Such a unique concept. So basically this one is about a girl who, she is a wizard, but she is a wizard of baking. So she can't just do like all types of magic. She can really only do magic when it involves baked goods. And she uses those baked goods to basically save the society that she lives in. And it's so fun, and it's a really cozy in the sense that it's a light adventure. There are still stakes, but it's not like heavy stakes. They're really light, and it was such a fun world to dive into. The next one was Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen. This was a reread for me. I love Pride and Prejudice. I don't know if there's really more to say about it. I mean, you probably know what Pride and Prejudice is. It's a classic, and I think that I'll probably reread it every couple of years. I listened to it on audiobook, and it was just lovely. In April, I had 4 5-star reads. The first one was The Screwtape Letters by C.S. Lewis. This is a book that follows 2 demons, and one is kind of like a senior demon writing to his nephew, who was a junior demon, I guess, about how to get his client, the person, to fall away from God and from the church. And I really love, there's so many lessons to be gleaned from this book. And I think that it would be an interesting read for you even if you're not Christian and you don't believe in God, just because there's some really cool concepts in it, and it's a fun premise. But I really love how so much of it was focused on the subtlety of the way the devil works, I guess, and how, you know, a lot of the time people fall away from God without even realizing it, and how easy that is to happen. And so this was a fun one. I would love to have a copy of it. I borrowed this copy that I read from my mom, and so I would love to get my own copy and do some annotating in it and really dive in, because it's just, there's so many lessons to be learned. It's a fun book. The next one was Tuck Everlasting by Natalie Babbitt. Babbitts? I think it's Babbitt. This one is following a family, the Tuck family, who drinks out of a well that makes them live forever, and then you're following a young girl who meets them and learns about them and just kind of their time together. I had never read this book, and I was like I didn't know that that's what it was about. And I really liked it. I thought it was really fun, really simple, and just like one of those classics that you're like, yeah, I understand. That's a classic for a reason. The next one was Shady Hollow by Juno Black. I read this because I did a book exchange with my friend Harmony at Harm's Honey. Follow her. She's amazing. She's the best. I love her. And this one, you are following a family, not a family, that's incorrect, a community of woodland creatures, and one of them gets murdered, and then you're following the main character, Vera Vixen, who is a fox, and she's a reporter, and she is going to solve the case. This is like if you combined Winnie the Pooh and Murder, She Wrote, and I love that. The next one was The Secret Garden by, who is The Secret Garden by? Frances Hodgkins Burnett. This one I had never read before. I read the movie. Incorrect. I watched the movie when I was a kid, and it was one of my sister's favorites, I think. Pretty sure. Sarah, let me know if that's right. Was it your favorite? I don't know. She's 10 years older than me, and I feel like I remember it being one of her favorites, but maybe that's incorrect. But basically, I watched the movie a lot growing up, and I never read the book. And this one, you are following a girl who grew up in India during the British occupation, and her parents died of an illness, and she's set to live with her uncle, and she discovers her cousin has an illness. I don't know if they ever say what it actually is, but basically he can't walk, and she discovers this secret garden that her uncle had for her aunt who has passed away, and you're just kind of following them and her discovering things about herself and learning and growing. And her character development, I think, is one of the best things about this book, because she starts off as a total brat, and then she really learns how to care and love for those around her and not be so selfish, and that's something that's always a nice lesson to have. In May, I unfortunately did not have any 5-star reads, and the highest I had was a 3-star. So I think if I had to pick a favorite from May, it would probably be Tress of the Emerald Sea by Brandon Sanderson. This one didn't work for me as much as I wanted it to, but I know a lot of people really love it and have said it's like one of the best cozy fantasies of recent years, and so maybe you might still like it even though it didn't work for me super well. You're following a girl named Tress who has to go on a quest for love, and basically the way that Brandon Sanderson described this is as if The Princess Bride was written from Buttercup's point of view. And so you're following Tress, and she has to go across these spore seas. So instead of water, the sea is made out of spores, and if they get water on them, they become like really dangerous. They turn into like vines and spikes and things, which is a really cool concept. And I did like the world building in this one a lot. But yeah, it was okay to me. It didn't blow my socks off, but I didn't hate it. So I gave that one a 3-star, but anyway, you might still like it though. In June, I had 4 5-star reads. The first one was The Brilliant Life of Eudora Honeysett by Annie Lyons. This one is following an old woman who is ready to die, and her little neighbor, she becomes friends with her little neighbor and basically finds a will to live again. But you're just kind of following things that happen to her in her life and lessons that she's learning from this little 10-year-old who's her neighbor, and why there's still something to hold on to even if you think all hope is lost. And I love these types of stories. I love stories when grumpy old people become friends with like their young neighbors and like find a will to live again. I don't know why I love them so much, but I do. I always think that they're just so heartwarming, and this one is no exception. The next one was Keeper of Enchanted Rooms by... who is it by? One second. It's by Charlie and Holmes. I had to go look at my bookshelf real quick. This one I was not expecting to like as much as I did. I mean, I thought that it was an interesting concept, but I ended up really loving it, and it was kind of a surprise for me because it's not usually my genre. It's kind of like a historical romance, which I know I said I loved Pride and Prejudice earlier, but like usually I'm not a romance girly at all, and so I'm kind of surprised I loved this book as much as I did, but I really did love it. This one is following a man who inherits a house and discovers that it's haunted, and then he is joined by this lady who works for this corporation, I guess, institution. I don't know what other word you would use for it, but they deal with spirits and haunted houses, and it's kind of like a Grumpy Sunshine, and it was super fun, and there was still like, it was higher stakes than I thought that it would be. And that's something I really liked about it. Like, the story really drew me in. The romance was super fun in it, and it's very clean, which is something that I appreciate because I don't read any smut. Yeah, like, there was still like a really good amount of stakes in it that I was like, what is going to happen? I really want these people to be okay. And I was really invested in the characters, so I loved this one. The next one was The Only One Left by Riley Sager. This book is insane. This is basically, it's like a drama thriller. I wouldn't say it's super thrilling, but it is more like a drama. And it is following a lady named Kit, who is a home health aide worker. And she goes to work for this old lady who is alleged to have murdered her whole family. And they were never able to prove it. And so now she's just an old lady, and she cannot talk because she's had a stroke, and she is able to type on a typewriter, and she says that she wants to tell Kit everything. And it is so juicy and so dramatic and so ridiculous, and I loved it. The next one is Remarkably Bright Creatures by Shelby Van Pelt. This book is amazing. Again, this falls into the like grumpy old person finding a will to live. Not necessarily finding a will to live as much in this one, but grumpy old person being friends with younger person vibe that I like. This one, you are following an older lady who works as a janitor in an aquarium. You're also following the octopus in that aquarium. He has his own sections, and I love them, and he's my favorite character. And then you are also following a young man who doesn't know who his biological father is, and whose mother has abandoned him, and who wants to reconnect with his past and figure out more about his dad and who his parents are. And I loved this book is like pretty heart-wrenching, but it really ties together so well. And I love the connections that they have. And like I said, Marcellus the octopus is the best character ever. I loved him. In July, I had 2 5-star reads, and that was Some Kind of Happiness by, I cannot remember who it's by, and I'm sorry. I'll put it on the screen who it's by. This book follows a young girl who has depression and does not understand what depression is and why she's feeling the way she's feeling, and she kind of uses this fantasy world to understand and come to terms with her depression and her parents' divorce. This book is heavy. It made me sob, and it just made me want to hold this little girl and tell her everything was going to be okay. But I think that it's a really wonderful read. It is a middle grade, and I do think that it would be helpful for some younger children to read this book and to have more understanding of depression, even whether that's for themselves or someone in their lives. Because unfortunately, children younger and younger are getting depression and having to deal with some really hard, awful things in this life. And so I think it would be helpful for younger audiences to read this book and to have a greater understanding and more empathy for those around them. Like I said, it was heavy, but it was really good, and it did end on a hopeful note, which is something that I appreciated. The next one was Everyone in My Family Has Killed Someone by... oh my gosh, I can't remember who it's by either. I'm sorry. Pregnancy brain is real, you guys. I'll put this on the screen as well. I'm sorry that I cannot remember these authors' names. The way I have it written down, I'll show you is just like a little bookshelf. And so I just write the names on the spines, and there's not enough space to write who the authors are. That's why I'm forgetting all of this. Anyway, this one, oh, Benjamin Stevenson, I think. Pretty sure. This one follows a man who is going to a little family reunion. There is a murder that happens. He's talking about how everyone in his family has killed somebody, and it is very much direct narrator to reader contact. He tells you exactly when somebody is going to die, like what chapter it's in. The narrative voice of this was so fun and so unique, and I think that's what made it a really unique mystery for me, is that the narrative of it was really, really well written and really cool. And this one is just a fun book. It's a fun book to follow, and I'm excited to read the next one, which is Everyone on This Train is a Suspect, I think is what it's called. I can put that title book cover up on the screen as well so you can see what I'm talking about. But I'm excited to keep reading in the series. I thought it was super fun. In August, I had 2 5-star reads. The first one was The Way Home. I think it's And the Road Home Gets Longer and Longer. And every day the road home gets longer and longer. I think it's And Every Day the Road Home Gets Longer and Longer by Frederick Bachman. This is a very short story, novella, I guess, maybe you could call it. I don't know if it's a novella or if it's a short story, but it is about a grandson talking to his grandfather who has Alzheimer's, and his adventuring through his brain with him and his forgetting what is happening, and you're kind of jumping around. And this one absolutely crushed me. Both of my grandmothers, one of my grandmothers has Alzheimer's and the other one has dementia, and it's so heartbreaking to see them not be able to communicate the same way anymore, remember who people are, remember what they were saying, remember where they are, and I know it's so frustrating for them. And it's just one of those parts of getting older that everybody wishes they didn't have to go through or watch other people go through. And so this one was just really, really, it hit close to home for me, and it was so beautifully written. I love Frederick Bachman's writing. If you haven't read anything by him, I highly recommend that you do, because he's a wonderful author, and he writes emotions so, so well. And this one was really hard-hitting for me, and I really, really loved it. The next one was Thornhenge by T. Kingfisher. This one is a retelling of Sleeping Beauty, where the princess is the monster, and you're following a little fairy who is in charge of keeping her asleep. And this one I thought was super fun. It's another novella. It was really well written. And again, I love T. Kingfisher's writing. I think she does a great job, and she comes up with some very unique stories, which is something that I always love. And this one was really fun to read, and it was really short. In September, I didn't have any 5 stars, but my favorite 4-star was The International House of Dereliction. I do not remember who it's by. Again, I apologize for that. I will put it on the screen. This is a middle grade about a little girl who moves into a house and next to it is a house that is condemned and it is haunted, and she connects with the ghosts, and it's like Casper the Friendly Ghost vibes. Friendly ghosts, not mean ghosts. And she learns little life lessons and helps them out, and it's very cute and very simple and very fun. In October, I had 2 5 stars. The first one was The Thursday Murder Club by Robert. I am so sorry that I'm bad at remembering, but I just am. It's a fact of life for me. I'll put it on the screen. I know his first name's Robert. Anyway, this one is following a group of retirees who meet every Thursday to try and solve cold cases, and then a murder happens at their retirement community and they are determined to solve it. This is like a 4-book series, and I'm really excited to keep reading in the series. I love this one. It's so fun, and I really enjoy British humor. It's very dry humor in this book, and it's just something that I found very witty and fun. The next one was Office BFFs by Angela Kinsey and Jenna Fischer. This one I love just because I love Angela Kinsey and Jenna Fischer's friendship. I mean, I like The Office enough. I did really like it when I watched it, but I love their friendship that came out of it, and I really love the way they talk about motherhood in this and supporting each other as a community of women and of mothers. And basically, if you've listened to the Office Ladies podcast, there's not a whole lot that's new in the book, but if you enjoy The Office and you like Angela Kinsey and Jenna Fischer, then it's worth a read. Or a listen to. I listened to it for free through Libby, and it was worth it to me. In November, I had 6 5-star books. They were all rereads. It was the whole Percy Jackson series, and then The Hobbit. So, let's see. Percy Jackson and Olympians, watch my vlog, and then you'll know everything you need to know about how I felt about these books. This was a reread for me. I absolutely love these books. They were one of my favorites growing up, and they still hold up for me. You're following a young man named Percy who discovers that he is half god, half human, and he has to go on various quests and save the world. And it's super fun, and it's really unique, and I love it. And then The Hobbit is the prequel, I guess you could call it, to Lord of the Rings. It follows Bilbo Baggins and his adventure in stealing treasure from a dragon, and it's super fun. And then December, I've only read 1 book this month, and that was Little Women by Louisa May Alcott. This one I'm gonna give it a 4-star, just because I think that it did drag in some parts. I was a little bit bored, I'm not gonna lie, through some of it, but overall I love the story. I love the sisterhood, and I love watching the characters grow up, because you follow them from when they are kids and young teens and teenagers to adulthood. And I love seeing their character development, the way that they solve problems together. And, you know, I know a lot of people critique this book for being too heavy-handed, but I don't think that that's always a bad thing. And I think it's okay to say, like, hey, this is the moral of the story, and this is what you should learn from it. Because there's lots of great things to learn from this book. It's a classic, and I just really enjoyed, like I said, the sisterhood aspect of it. I have 3 older sisters myself, and so reading about a family of 4 girls was just something that was really fun for me, and I really enjoyed overall. So yeah, those were my favorite books of 2023. I had some really good reads this year. So far I've read 78 books, I think. We'll see if I finish any more in the month of December. I might not, just because, you know, the holiday season is crazy. I have a toddler and I'm pregnant, so, you know, reading isn't always, like, something I'm able to do a whole lot of, especially this time of year, but that's okay. And overall, I would say I really enjoyed my reading this year, and I'm really grateful for the opportunity to have read as much as I did. Let me know what your favorite books of the year were. If you've read any of the books that I've mentioned, let me know how you felt about them. And just, yeah, tell me about your reading year. How did it go? I'm curious to know. I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye!